Good morning to all my friends and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. What I'd love to do today is go through a book entitled The Brain That Changes Itself by an author named Norman Doidge. And this book was published on the 15th of March 2007 and explores the concept of neuroplasticity, showing how the brain can change and adapt even in adulthood. So let's kick off this book and have a look at what we can learn on the brain and how it works and how it can work for us. So the first key point that comes from this author is where he talks about the concept of neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity talks about the fact that the brain is not hardwired. It is malleable and constantly changing in response to our experiences, our thoughts, and our behaviors. This is really powerful. This plasticity allows for learning, recovering from injury, and adaptation to new circumstances. So the key message, once again, is that the human brain is not hardwired and continues to change to align itself with the environment that we live in and to allow us to grow, develop, and modify ourselves and to fit in, basically. So the next key point from this author is where the author talks about the use-dependent brain, and that the brain strengthens what it frequently uses. So use it or lose it. Repeated thoughts and behaviors reinforce the neural pathways, making them stronger and more efficient, and of course more effective over time. It's a little bit like cow pads or sheep pads. When you're walking in the countryside, you'll see the well-worn paths created by the animals, the sheep or the cows. And the same thing happens with our brains. The things that we constantly think about, the things that we constantly obsess over, become well-worn paths in our brains, and our brains use it as a shortcut to deciding and think about the things that are most important to us. The author here talks about the fact that mental practice is powerful. And this is where we get into visualization. Imagining or visualizing an action can create similar brain changes as physically performing it, highlighting the power of mental rehearsal. So what we're saying here is that the brain can't tell the difference between something that is real and something that has been vividly imagined. So you can trick your brain by just imagining in a very powerful way, using emotion, things that are occurring, and your brain will take it on board. The brain can also compensate and recover. And some people talk about the fact that the brain can add, delete, and distort. People with brain damage, it's been discovered, can recover lost abilities by rerouting tasks to undamaged parts of the brain, demonstrating how the brain can reorganize itself and refix itself, I guess is one way of putting it. The other thing that the author talks about, which is really powerful, is a thing called sensory substitution, where when one sensory input is lost, e.g. sight or hearing, the brain can rewire itself to process information through other senses, enabling compensation. And an example of this is if somebody, loses their sight, as we were saying here. What happens is that the person just doesn't miss out on experiencing life. The other senses, the ears, the smell, the feeling, all of those things get enhanced, and that happens automatically by the brain rewiring itself and redirecting itself. I remember years ago when I was working at Telstra, one of the fellows there was blind and he knew who I was. And I said, "How did you know who I was?" And he says, I remembered your smell, which was, quite interesting and powerful back in those days, and just, was mind-boggling for me. So the author here says that the important thing to understand is that attention is the key. You become what you focus on. Focused attention enhances neuroplasticity. To make lasting changes, the brain needs attention, which highlights why mindfulness and concentration and focus are so crucial for learning. The author then goes on to talk about the brain's capacity for rejuvenation. Aging brains can be rejuvenated, and this is important for us who are in our 60s. The aging brain can be rejuvenated with proper training and stimulation. Training and stimulation, challenging the idea that cognitive decline is inevitable. So through focused, intentional activity, we can stay young for as long as we can by staying focused and using our brain, remembering, use it or lose it. The author goes on to talk about the role of environment, enriched environments and varied experiences. Once again, very important words here. Enriched environments and varied experiences stimulate and maintain brain growth and keep it flexible, while monotonous routines can limit neural development. The author goes on to talk about as well that plasticity and addiction go hand in hand. Neuroplasticity underlies both positive and negative changes. Addictions reinforce harmful neural circuits, but these circuits can be rewired with consistent and deliberate effort. Healing through neuroplasticity. The next point that the author talks about, and the final point, is that conditions like chronic pain, OCD, and stroke can be treated using neuroplastic methods. Therapies that harness the brain's adaptability can promote recovery and alleviate symptoms. These insights from the book highlight the brain's capacity to adapt, heal and grow, emphasizing the importance of mental exercises and the stimulating environment.